Again, court has resumed. The jury is not in the courtroom. Repeat, not in the courtroom. So we'll see what legal matter they're going to deal with as we continue with our coverage.
Okay, come on up. You can just have a seat for now. If you testify, I'll place you under oath, but otherwise, we're just going to have a discussion a little bit here, so, but we do need to hear you so that the court reporter can take everything down. So, you have been subpoenaed by the defense.
I can't even really
Do that. You've been subpoenaed by the defense to answer certain questions about being with George Floyd on May 25th, 2020. What you observed about his physical condition at various points in Cup Foods, and basically a time frame on when you were with him that day and what you observed about him. Specifically, I think focusing mostly on the time in Cup Foods, but then also in the motor vehicle before the police came to the window. Okay? It's my, and you're willing to answer those questions about George Floyd? Okay. The parties also have the right to ask you, in order to test whether your perceptions are accurate, on whether you were under the influence of drugs or alcohol that day. Are you willing to answer that question?
Yes.
Okay.
I or him.
Are you willing to answer the question whether you were under the influence of drugs or alcohol?
Yes, I was not.
Okay. We're not going to be eliciting an opinion from you whether George Floyd was under the influence, just for how he looked.
Okay.
And how he acted,
Yep.
but not an opinion about whether he was under the influence.
Okay.
But the lawyers, in order to make sure that the jury knows whether to consider your evidence and how much weight to give it, is whether you were sober or under the influence. Are you willing to answer that question?
Yes.
Okay. Now you understand, I don't find that those questions would expose you to criminal liability, but you do have a Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate yourself. Do you need time to talk to a lawyer? And I have limited the lawyers to those topics so as not to get anything that might tend to incriminate you that you're not expecting. Okay?
Yep.
Do you have any questions?
No.
Do you need time to talk to a lawyer? Okay, ready to go then?
Yes.
All right. What we're going to do is we're going to bring the jury back in and then have you stand up so I can swear you in, and then we'll go from there. Do you have any questions? No. Okay, great. Let's bring in the jury.
So we've been listening there to the judge talking to Shawanda R. She was with George Floyd, and the questions will be, what were her observations of how George Floyd looked and how he acted? So let's listen in.
I'll ask you to stand to be sworn, but just follow my directions, you'll be fine. Mr. Nelson, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Shawanda R.
Ms. Hill, if you could stand right in the witness chair, or actually there is fine. You can raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, have a seat, please. And before we begin, we're going to have you state your full name, spelling each of your names.
Shawanda, Shawanda, Renee, Renee, Hill, Hill.
Mr. Nelson?
Good morning, Ms. Hill.
Hi.
Thank you for being here with us today. I just have a few questions about May 25th of 2020. Do you recall that date?
Yes.
On that date, were you at the Cup Foods located in Minneapolis?
Yes. Yes.
Did you run into anybody that you knew while you were there?
Yes. George Floyd.
And while you were at the Cup Foods, or in the Cup Foods, did you have an opportunity to observe Mr. Floyd's behavior, demeanor, things of that nature?
Yes.
How would you describe Mr. Floyd's behavior while inside of the Cup Foods?
Happy, normal, talking, alert.
Did he offer to give you a ride?
Yes.
A ride to wherever it was
My
you were
house.
going? And so did you go to his car with him?
Yes.
Once you got into the car, did you observe any changes to his demeanor?
When we were in the car for the first 8 minutes, we were talking and, you know what I'm saying, hugging, you know what I'm saying, talking about what we were about to do. And then I got a phone call. And so I was on the phone for the rest of the time until the little boys came to the car. He fell asleep at that time.
So at some point during the course of the time that you were in the car with Mr. Floyd, Mr. Floyd suddenly fell asleep.
Yes.
Right? And the phone call you received, was that from your daughter?
Yes.
And so you were talking with your daughter during that time?
Yes.
And you described, would you agree that at some point, you said some little boys, are those employees of the
Yes.
store?
Sorry.
That's okay. The store employees came and approached the car, correct?
Yes.
And at that point, Mr. Floyd suddenly fell asleep?
He was already asleep.
He was already sleeping?
Yes. When they came to the car. And when they came there, I tried to wake him up. They tried to wake him up. I tried to wake him up over and over. And his friend tried to wake him up. And he woke up. Then he'll say something, and he made a little gesture, and nodded back off.
Okay.
He did that a couple times.
Was that kind of a sudden change from how you observed him in the store to the car?
Yes, but he already told me in the store he was tired because he had been working on
Objection. There is an objection.
Objection, grounds?
Yes, the answer is stricken.
Overruled.
And so at some point, did the store clerks leave the side of the car?
Yes, I told him that I would wake him up and send him in there because I didn't have the money on me. I used my money. So.
Okay. And did you continue to try to rouse
Yes.
Mr. Floyd?
We finish the questions so that we don't over that. Okay? Because the court report is getting everything done. It's really hard to feel.
Okay.
Okay? Thanks.
Thank you. So did you continue to try to awaken Mr. Floyd?
Yes, I tried a couple times, but then, I just let it go for a minute because I was back on the phone and
All right.
then the rest of it.
And did the store clerks come back to the car a second time?
No.
And were you, at some point, the police officers approached the car?
Yes.
And Mr. Floyd was aroused by the police?
Yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Ray.
Good morning, Ms. Hill. I just have a couple follow-up questions for you, okay?
Yes.
So during the period that you were with Mr. Floyd in the store, he was, you said he was alert,
Yes.
friendly,
Yes.
talkative,
Happy talking. Yes.
and
Back, hugging.
and when you went out to the store, he walked by himself out to the store?
Yes.
In fact, did a little dance as he went out to the car?
Yes.
We just have to make sure that you wait till the question's done so we aren't talking over each other, okay? I know it's a hard habit to break, but we just have to be careful with that, okay? And when you got back to the car, at some point he nodded off.
Yes.
But you were able to wake him, correct?
Yes.
And talk to him.
Yes. But he wasn't that coherent at the time.
He was just awakened
Yes.
and nodded off again.
Yes.
And at some point, the police officers walked up, correct?
Mhm.
So, yes.
Yes.
And he, well, you woke him up when the police officers walked up, correct?
Yes.
And so then he was awake.
Yes. You just want me to say yes or no? Explain what you want me to do.
Well, explain.
I want to explain. Okay, thank you. So when I tried to wake him up, he woke up the second time. I said, Floyd, the police is here. It's about the $20 bill wasn't real. I kept saying, baby, get up. The police was out. So he looked, and we looked to the right, and he had the police. He tapped on the window with a flashlight. And I'm like, Floyd. And so he turned back around again. He's like, what? And I was like, baby, that's the police. Open the door, roll down the window, whatever he told me to do. So he looked back, and when he seen the man had the gun at the window when we looked back to him. So he instantly grabbed the wheel, and he was like, please don't kill me. Please don't shoot me. Don't shoot me. What did I do? Just tell me what I did. Please don't kill me. Please don't shoot me. And I'm like, Floyd, baby, it's not. You said explain. I'm trying to explain what state he was in, sir.
I did. And I have to ask some questions. So I'm sorry to cut you off. I really am.
It's all right.
But I want to go back and just cover one thing quick. Where were you sitting in the vehicle?
In the back right passenger seat.
Okay. And so when officers came,
Back passenger seat.
were there two officers that came to the vehicle?
Yes.
So one came to the passenger side and one to the driver's side?
Yes.
So initially you saw one officer to your right on the passenger side, correct?
No, I was up like I'm trying to wake him up, so I'm in the middle, like at the time, when the police were there. That's how I was able to see him too, just we both looked at the same time.
And when he was, during this time period, coming out from Cup Foods and being in the vehicle, did he complain of shortness of breath at all?
No.
Did he complain of chest pains at all?
No.
And other than being sleepy or nodding off a little bit, did he seem abnormal to anyone?
Not at all.
And did he seem startled when the officer pulled a gun on him?
Very.
I have nothing further.
Anything.
Thank you. So while you were in the car, or prior to getting in the car, Mr. Floyd appeared to you to be normal, correct?
Yes.
When he got in the car, he fell asleep, correct?
We talked for a while, then he fell asleep.
And then ultimately, you had to make several efforts to
Yes.
try to wake him up.
Yes.
I'm looking for.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. We appreciate you coming in. You are excused.
Thank you.
Here we listen to the testimony there of Shawanda Hill, and she just explained it. She's with George Floyd, May 25th. He's normal at the Cub Foods. He's alert, friendly, talkative, get to the car, and this is what the defense wants, that he falls asleep. And it took several efforts to wake him up, and then she went on to really explain, maybe even a little more than the prosecution wanted, what happened when police arrived. She said, well, I'm explaining the story. Prosecution comes back in cross also to say, did he have shortness of breath? No. Chest pains? No. So an interesting back and forth there. We'll see who is next for the defense. And it seems they are taking us back to the scene. There's Eric Nelson. It could be the officer, Peter Chang. We could get more body cam footage here. The ruling was that his body camera footage will be allowed. So Officer Peter Chang, Park Police, the 5th officer on the scene. And there's Eric Nelson, many pointing out that Eric Nelson's all alone, so he's having to go get his own witnesses. Let's bring in our experts real quick. Gene Casares, Shawanda Hill, again, quick witness, that's his strategy. Almost a rapid fire round with these first 3 witnesses.
And she took the place of Maurice Hill because this is what they wanted from the witness that decided to plead the 5th. They wanted to be able to show that in that car, he couldn't stay awake, was falling asleep, and she described it. It was hard to understand some of the things she was saying. She wasn't too happy to be there, but I looked at the expression when the prosecution came up to do that recross, and maybe it wasn't directed at them, maybe it was just having to be in the courtroom in general, but she was not happy.